if you think of the data that you have about your projects, and you want to identify which is the data that's going to have the most valuable lessons learned for our organization. While it's good to have the budgets, how did you track the budget? How was your scheduling? How did you do your resourcing? Really, if you think about it, some of the most valuable learnings that you're ever going to have on your projects are going to be from your RAID log. Why is that? Well, it contains all of the risks that you identified for your project and how you responded to those risks and if it was successful or not. If it wasn't successful and you have an issue, then you can track what were the issues that actually happened, because you probably don't want to do that again. And so you can identify each of those as lessons learned and understand what were the actual impacts of those issues. What were the things that you did to respond to that? What was the root cause? And then you can also take a look at the decisions that were made on the project. Did the decision help the project, or was it maybe in retrospect, was it maybe not the best decision we could have made? These are all things that we can learn from each of our projects and carry forward into future projects if we have a good repository for them. And as we're going to be doing in the next quarter, we're going to be launching our tool, which allows artificial intelligence to proactively learn from those for you and recommend to you as a project manager or project leader some things that you might consider for your project, because we have all of this knowledge in-house. And what's great about is this is a very valuable knowledge store for the organization long term. You might have project leaders that come and go. It's natural. 10 years, there are always limits to those. But if we can capture the knowledge, the learnings from each individual project over the case of years and even decades, we start to build our own knowledge base that we can apply to our current and future projects. So that is really some of the great promise of RAID logs, is the ability to store and make all that information useful to our current project delivery.
And you just segue into my next question very smoothly, Kim. Thank you very much. I was curious to know more about the integration of RAID log and, of course, the leverage of artificial intelligence. So we are not there yet. You're saying that now you're capturing the data to be able to use AI in the future. Is that right?
Yes, we actually have AI today. So we have an entire roadmap of features. Artificial intelligence is evolving so incredibly quickly as a product. And of course, we, like our customers, are very concerned to make sure that anything we release has a very strong level of security and privacy in it. So what we have already released, I think it was last year, we released the ability to identify and recommend risks for a particular project. And the way that works today is you describe your project, and the large language model will assess it based on its past learnings and will come back and suggest these are potential risks that your project can face. And it will recommend the risk. It will identify a potential impact or a potential problem, rather, how that impacts your project. It will provide a qualitative analysis in that it will estimate the probability of occurrence and provide a relative impact on the scale of 1 to 100. And then it will suggest potential response strategies. And as a project leader, it's important for me to be able to exercise judgment. And so when we built this feature, we built it in a way where we never want to override the good judgment of the project leader or the project team. So we built it in a way where it suggests potential risks to the project leader. And as a leader, I can look at it and say, yes, I like this one. Yes, I like this one. Nope, I don't really like that one. And so they can go through and identify which ones that they want, and they can bring those into their risk register. And then further, when they can go in and they can adjust those, they can say, well, the AI thought this was a 70% probability. I actually think it's closer to 50%, so I can make that adjustment with my team. And that whole process of selecting which are the appropriate risks, that's actually learning opportunities for our current AI to go and become better at what it does. The next steps that we're working on, and as I say, hope to launch in Q3 of this year, is that language model doesn't know anything about the projects that we've done in the past. And so the next version of our AI will be able to say, okay, you've done say 5 similar projects in the last 2 years, and the AI sort of quote unquote knows about that. And what we want to do is we want to make recommendations proactive. We want to make it smart. Having run a lot of PMOs, I've been able to get my teams very often to a point of maturity where they were very good at capturing lessons learned and documenting them. In fact, there was a study recently that found that as many as over 80% of organizations feel like they do a decent job of capturing lessons learned, but only 30% think they actually do a good job of consuming them. And that's really the problem. You can capture all the great lessons learned in the world, but you're depending on our project managers who are busy people, and project controllers, project leaders, really busy. And to consume those lessons learned, they need to go into a knowledge base and start doing keyword searches. Well, what about this? What about that? It's a lot of extra work, and it doesn't need to be that challenging. It doesn't need to be that much work. And so what we're doing with our AI is the AI knows the project that you're doing. It knows about it. And it can compare that knowledge with past projects and evaluate past risks, past issues, lessons learned from past projects, and proactively prompt them. And the prompt will look something like, hey, project manager, would you like to see a list of recommendations based on past projects? And we'll have a list. And as a project leader, I can say, yes, I like this one. I like this one. That one doesn't quite apply. And that is actually, you're providing instruction back to the AI. So each time we go through this, we get better. And this lets you take that really valuable store of knowledge from the organization and apply it to my current projects. One other thing we're working on right now from an AI perspective is if you have a project and there's a contract in it. Well, that's a lot of projects that have contracts in them. So we didn't actually invent the RAID log. RAID logs have been around since the 80s. The actual invention of the RAID log was to meet the need whereby you would have a vendor, a subcontractor negotiate contracts with, at the time, government agencies in the UK is where it actually originated from. And you can imagine these negotiations went on for months and very complicated, a lot of assumptions, a lot of dependencies, risks were identified on both sides. A lot of, they did their best to document it in their contracts, which I'm sure were 50, 100 more pages containing all these terms and conditions, risks, assumptions that applied to the project. Well, the challenge is now the project delivery team comes into the picture to go and deliver. They don't have that knowledge. They don't have that experience. They haven't spent months in these conversations. So they have to read through these 100 some pages contracts or more and try to extract what are the assumptions that we need to hold each other to and validate. What are the dependencies that were committed on both sides? What are the deliverables? Who's responsible for what? And what do each organization view as risks or opportunities in the contract that we have to respond to? And there was no easy way to do that. And that's actually how RAID logs were invented, was to pull all of those things out of the contract and put them into a format that the delivery team could take and act on and keep in mind throughout the course of the project. And so with that spirit, part of our next AI release, what we're planning to do is provide the ability to upload project documents, your contracts, your project charters, your statements of work, other contract artifacts. And the AI will comb through all that material and come back and say, okay, based on what we see in the contract, here are all the assumptions that you need to keep in mind. Here are the dependencies, the risks. Here are the decisions that need to get made that are specified in the contract, and bring them to a place where the project delivery team can have those in mind and act on those and make sure that our delivery is in line with the commitments from the contract.